Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And I've got a fantastic guest for you today, Joe Casabona from Pennsylvania. And he's going to talk to us all about showing our listeners how they can save 12 plus hours per week, especially on their podcast through processes and automation. He's got a fantastic story and he helps busy solopreneurs. And I love having entrepreneurs on the podcast, such as Joe. So, Joe, welcome.
Thanks. Thanks for that intro. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I know we connected through Podmatch. So, briefly talk about who you are, your business, briefly how you got there and how the audience can benefit from your presence today.
Yeah, so the way I got to where I am today happened because of two really important things in my life. My first daughter, was born in 2017, and I feel like everybody, like everyone's a great parent before they become a parent. I thought this will be fine. Baby sleep most of the time. I can get all of my work done when she's napping, except she never napped long enough for me to do anything appreciable. And so that kind of came to a head over the summer when our babysitter had to went on a long trip basically. And I was challenged by somebody in one of my mastermind groups to do less. And what he meant was do fewer, like take on fewer projects. And what I heard was automate everything I don't have to do. So that started me on a journey of taking a bunch of things off of my plate by making computers do things so I don't have to. Um, but that wasn't good enough. And in 2020, towards the end of 2020, my wife is a nurse. Our second had been born a few months earlier, and so I was at home with two out of my soon to be three kids. My wife was working a lot, and I wasn't able to work a lot, and I had a panic attack. I was just really stressed by, being cooped up at home and trying to be a good dad, but also trying to keep my business afloat. And my oldest, again, her name's Teresa. She was 3 years old at this point, and she comes over to me and hands me a bottle of water and says, "It's okay, Daddy. It's gonna be okay." And I thought, this is not okay. She shouldn't be taking care of me. And so basically, the very next day, I was like, okay, I need to hire a virtual assistant. I need to literally only do what I can do. So I put a bunch of systems in place. Our youngest was born a year later. And I was able to take a whole month off without being stressed because my business was basically on autopilot for that time.
Yeah, it's really interesting because this sounds like, kind of the right after the aftermath of the, March of 2020 when the whole world basically was going to shit. So and it's really interesting because you talk about automation and processes. So kind of walk us through like what are the key things did you first eliminate things? Did you get rid of redundant tasks? Did you delegate? What kind of software kind of where did you get started?
So the first thing I did, and this is such a crucial step, right? Because you can't, um, imagine walking into a kitchen and saying, I'm going to make dinner, and then having no idea like what ingredients you have in your cupboard. You could still do something, but it's not going to be the best use of your time and your skills. And so the first thing I did was make a list of everything I do and then put a little check mark next to the things that I absolutely had to do. And this is a humbling experience, right? Because you think that your business needs you. It does not. All I need to do in my business is lend my voice for my podcasts and my videos and my expertise for my coaching clients. Everything else someone else can do. And so I made that list. I made the determination, and then I first looked at the highest impact stuff. What are the things that I can offload that will save me the most time initially? And a lot of that had to do with my podcast, right? Because again, my voice is the only thing I need for my podcast. So I dug a little deeper, right? I created kind of SOPs for everything I did for my podcast. How do I find guests? What do I do to record? What do I do after I record? How do I publish to my website? And for most of those things, I was connecting like one app to another. That's a key in understanding if you can use a tool like Zapier or if you need to actually delegate it to another person. And in the instances where, for example, publishing it to my website, I'm not just connecting two apps. I found a VA and she's still with me and I give her raises regularly so she stays with me. But in those instances, I delegate to my VA. So that's kind of the high level overview of what I did to get everything, a lot of stuff off my plate.
And one thing is interesting is commonly encountered with busy entrepreneurs is that so a how much does this cost you in terms of like, because if you look at your, for example, your hourly rate, a couple hundred per hour, and then if you're spending it on like software or VA, like what amount are you spending per hour to save you, and how much time does that save you, just so people can get a rough estimate of just cost. Is it going to be wildly expensive? I'm just kind of for people to get a good framework.
Yeah, this is a really good question. It's really going to depend, right? So about 2 years ago, I switched from Zapier to Make.com, formerly Integromat,
Mhm.
because I saved about 90% per month,
Mm,
right? So Make.com, I would consider myself a power user,
mm,
costs $11 a month for me
mm,
versus it was like 75 per month on Zapier. Now
mhm,
that with Zapier, like they have a new plan and the price decreases dramatically if you pay annually, but I kind of hate that. Like I hate that you're gonna like try to lock me into a year by like giving me a 50% discount. I get like a month or two free. That's a soapbox though. My VA is based in the Philippines. And so I do pay her a living wage. I determined that to be around, based on like some Googling, about $350 per month. And so we don't really, I mean, we have an hourly rate, but based on the hourly rate she gave me, she
mhm,
never exceeds that. Right. So
mm,
that's something to consider. I think she like pitched me at $4 a month, and that I just felt very, even though that's like a reasonable amount for her, maybe I felt very guilty paying that. So, um, I still pay her closer to like, well, I guess it depends on the week, but $8 to $10 an hour.
uh-huh.
Um, but it's still like I want to hit that living wage, so I just pay her whatever needs to happen to make that living wage happen. And so she's based in the Philippines, and so the really important thing about someone at her, let's say, kind of skill level for what we're working with here, and the fact that she's ESL and everything, the tasks still need very clear input and output. Like she needs to know what she's getting, and then she needs to know what it should look like at the end.
Mhm,
And those tasks are great for her. If you're looking for somebody to like do more autonomous scheduling and other tasks, they would need a deeper understanding of the business. And so then you're probably looking at, $20, $25 an hour from what I've seen. So those are a couple of level setting prices there. And so if you're wondering, my hourly rate I determined to be around $200 to $250 an hour, depending on what I'm doing. And so if it takes my VA, let's say an hour to publish a podcast episode, it doesn't, but let's just say it does. That would cost me $250 versus like $10. So that is a pretty considerable cost savings there and
yeah,
time savings, right? I can spend that hour doing something better, like finding a sponsor that's even more than $10.
yeah. Or spending with your family and with loved ones.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I took Friday off as we record this. I took Friday off. I wasn't going to, but it was my son's birthday, he decided he wanted to go to the zoo. And I'm like, well, I can't not go to the zoo on my son's birthday with him. So I just knocked off for the day, and I'm able to do that because I have the right systems in place.
Yeah. Yeah, the most common thing I hear from entrepreneurs that use your system and methodology is it gives them time to spend with loved ones. On occasion, I hear like it allows them to go make more money, pitch sponsors, and all that, which is, I mean, that's more power to you. The other question I get from you is because I had the same problem is like what are your strategies for managing teams? Because one, I had one editor. Now I use almost completely AI software, and so it cut my cost by 90%. I pay like whereas an editor cost me tens of thousands, now I pay like hundreds per year and I get 10x the output. But one thing is like they just don't get it, or they just kind of this kind of you give it to them and they come back to you with more, like it just becomes like the more emotional and mental overhead just becomes so great that it's not even worth it anymore. So how do you manage that? Just like it's kind of like you want to pass it on. They know what to do, but then they just come back with like 10x questions. You answer those 10x questions, they come back to you with 100 times questions. It's kind of a back and forth. How do you handle that?
Yeah, this is a great question, right? And it's basically like, how do you make sure? Well, I'll put it to you this way. My favorite show for a long time was Scrubs. And in Scrubs, which is a hospital-based show with doctors and interns, one of the doctors said, "Show me an intern that only doubles my time, and I'll give them a kiss." Which is to say, yeah, bringing on people can mean more work, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning, right? With my VA, her name's Anna. And again, like I say this all the time, please don't leave me.
Uh,
Like things would fall apart.
yeah.
Um, in the beginning, it was a little rough because it was my first VA. I
Yeah.
didn't really know what I was doing. I would say things like, "Go find me conferences to speak at." She has no idea like what I talk about, what kind of conferences I would go to, would I fly? Do I only want the United States? And so like that was like a terrible task for her.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So with my VA, what I do is when I have a new task, I record myself doing it. I set up a Loom video, I go through the task, I talk through everything. At the beginning, I say transcribe this, and then when you're done, write out the steps. And so what this does is she's hearing it, she's writing it, and then she's doing it, and she's seeing it. And if she has questions, she knows that she can ask them, right? Because in the beginning too, she was like afraid to ask questions. I'm like, I would rather you spend 30 minutes trying to figure it out and then ask me what's wrong, or ask me the question that you're struggling with, instead of you spending 8 hours trying to figure it out on your own, right? And so with those videos, she knows exactly what she needs to do. If she has questions, she asks before she gets started. Otherwise, she gets right to work
Mm.
because she sees the clear inputs and the clear outputs.
Mm.
With my editor, I've been with him for a really long time. And so what I did, right? And this is like a little bit of time investment. You need to do the task so that you know how to delegate the task, unless unless you are paying someone else hundreds of dollars to do it, right? Because
Yeah.
then they're skilled and they understand, right? But I edited an episode, I sent it to my editor, and I sent it to three editors actually, and I said, like, here's the general format. Can you clean it up, make it like this? Here's the intro, here's the outro, here's the music. And then I picked my editor, and for a while I would listen, right after he'd send them back, but he specialized in my format. So like that was all good. I don't even really listen to his episodes anymore. Like
Yeah.
the next time I hear an episode is when it hits my public podcast feed.
Mm.
And so it takes some time investment up front, but now when I record a podcast episode, I record it, I still write the intro and the summary because I was there. There are points I want to highlight. I record the intro. And then once I do that, I don't see the episode again until it's public
Mm.
because I put everything in a Dropbox folder. I have an automation send that to my editor and email him. My editor uploads it back to Dropbox. Then my VA gets an email and she takes it from there. So it takes some time to work with your team.
Mhm.
Patience and clarity are really important,
Mhm.
and showing and telling will help big time.
It sounds like majority is communication and style and just like videos and screenshots,
Yeah.
sort of things.
If you want to be in a position where you just like tell somebody go do this, that's fine. But now you have like a full-time employee who is very skilled at whatever you're asking them to do,
Yeah.
right? That's not quite the same as having and that's not to say that my editor is not very skilled, but he's not my full-time employee. He has other people that he works with. And so I can't just be like, well, now I can be like, hey, I have another episode for you. Right. Just like with my VA, like she knows when she has another episode to publish, she does it. But when I have a new task for my VA, I can't just be like, hey, my goal is this. Go achieve that goal. Right. That's above her pay grade. I'd have to hire someone who's maybe just below me or at my skill level, but who doesn't have like the same like personal goals for my business as I do.
Yeah. Yeah, really, really interesting. So yeah, those are kind of like just pressing things. I know we have come around 5 to 7 more minutes left. And so the other question you have is which with virtual assistants, where's the best place to find them? Is it a Fiverr, Upwork, other remote jobs? Talk about where people can find, very good, affordable virtual assistants.
Yeah, this is a really good question. So I'll say like I haven't looked in a while. Like I got real lucky, I guess. I used onlinejobs.ph, which is like strictly a like Filipino virtual assistant website. If you do that, what I recommend is making the job listing very clear and having a task that you send out to 3 to 5 people. You're going to get inundated with applications. I'm talking like thousands. So like what I did was I set up a Gmail filter and just put everything in a folder, and once a day I would go through and try to find like 2 or 3 people whose application sounded good, reach
Yeah.
out to them, and based on some initial questions I would send them a task. I did that for like 5 days. Like after that, it just got to be too much, and like I'm really sorry to anybody who I didn't respond to after that. But um, then when you're done, just take that down. Like take that job listing down because you will keep getting emails forever. So that's one place. Um, and the other question you mentioned, or the other place you mentioned, was Fiverr. I found my editor on Fiverr, like before we stopped using Fiverr. So I think that's my last few experiences with that have not been very good, but for my editor, that was good. So again, your goal here is probably going to be find a few people in your budget, send them the same episode to edit, and then see who does with the same instructions and see who does the best job. And that's like, yeah, it'll cost you a little money up front, but it'll save you down the line of like picking someone kind of blind and then having to do that back and forth where it's like you're getting 10 questions back and 100 questions back. And at some point you just think, well, it would have been easier if I just did it myself.
Yeah. Yeah, that was yeah, and sometimes, kind of the frustration is like, do you have time to actually sift through all of those and kind of because that time could be better spent off doing other things. And, if you look at like Facebook, there's Zuck and then there's like there used to be Sheryl Sandberg, or like they have somebody that does all of that stuff and then that leaves the CEO to kind of do very high level, kind of, which yeah, I mean, yeah, I remember those days where, just kind of getting hundreds of questions and just kind of be like, it's easier if I just do it myself. So, but that's not, the other kind of to round it out, how can people find you and, how can people use your services? Because I know you help them automate, delegate, eliminate, kind of mundane podcasting tasks. So talk about that.
Yeah, so I think the best place to go is going to be podcastworkflows.com/Lou, Loo. Is that how you say your last name? Is that
Yeah.
right? Okay, cool. I will have a custom landing page there. You'll be able to get my automations database, which is like, yeah, if you're familiar with Zapier or Maker, whatever, like fine, you can just take those and install them on your account. Otherwise, this is just ideas for what you can automate. And then there will also be ways to connect with me on social media and how you can work with me. So if you're going there right now, Chris, to see, I haven't set it up yet. I always set the page up after the interview so that I know which opt-in to use for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And thanks for a wonderful conversation. And I love talking with you. I love your setup in the background. And for all the audience, be sure to give Joe's socials a like and follow, reach out to him. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. This was